I stood outside the grand, well-lit mansion, clutching a small leather clutch in my hand, my fingers barely trembling. But my heart was racing. The scent of summer lingered in the air, warm and thick. And for a moment, I almost forgot who I was. Standing there, on the edge of a life I was about to change forever. I'm Megan Miller, 32 years old, a graphic designer in Chicago. And if you're wondering how someone like me could end up outside my family's lavish reunion after years of being told I was worthless, let me show you how. Flashback to a younger me, a wide-eyed girl with stars in her eyes, holding a handmade invitation to family gatherings that would never come. The voices of my family echoed in my head, the harsh judgments, the laughter at my expense. "Look at Megan," my mother's voice would mock. "Always trying too hard. Never quite making the cut." My brother Derek, perfect Derek. Golden Derek had always been the one they looked up to. The successful one. The one who had it all together. The one they wanted to be. But me, I was the failure. The afterthought. The one who could never measure up. My heart pounds. And I clutch the clutch tighter. This moment was years in the making. Years of being overlooked. Of being ignored. Of being dismissed like I wasn't even there. Why bother coming? Megan. My mother's voice again. As sharp as ever. You can't even keep a stable job, let alone impress anyone. I can hear the sting of her words as if they were said yesterday. Not years ago. I've spent my life proving to her no. Proving to myself that I was worth something. Worth more than just the disappointment they labeled me with. And tonight, I was about to make that clear. But first, let's talk about what led me here. Before I get into the full story, I just need to ask, are you tired of being underestimated? Hit that like button. Leave me a comment. And don't forget to subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this story unfolds. The family that always looked right through me. Growing up in Ridgeview, Pennsylvania, everything looked perfect on the outside. My father, Frank, owned the biggest hardware store in town. Well respected, always dressed sharply in a suit that screamed successful businessman. My mother, Karen, ran a small bakery that had won awards at every county fair. Their reputation perfect. But behind closed doors, it was a different story. At home, I was the one who could never quite get it right. My father would come home from a long day. His patience worn thin. He'd throw his keys down on the counter, barely noticing me standing there, hoping for his approval. "That's not how it's done," he'd say, his voice a low growl as I tried. Yet again, to show him I had potential. And my mother, her disappointment was a constant, unspoken weight I carried on my shoulders. "Why can't you be more like Derek?" she would ask. Derek, who had the perfect grades, the athleticism, the charm that got him anything he wanted. And there was me, the other one, the one who was never quite enough. But I tried. God, I tried. I worked harder, stayed longer, pushed myself further. All I wanted was to be seen, to be noticed, to have the respect that Derek effortlessly commanded. But it wasn't just my parents. Even our friends, people who were supposed to be there to support us, looked at me like I was invisible. I remember going to one of Derek's birthday parties, just after I had started working my first real job. You know, one of Derek's friends said to me, "You're lucky to have such a stable job. Not everyone can settle for that." It wasn't a compliment. It never was. I had built my life from scratch, starting as an assistant at a marketing firm, working my way up. And it wasn't enough for anyone, least of all my own family. Does this sound familiar? If you've ever felt like you were never enough for your family, like they just never saw your worth, hit that like button and share your thoughts below. We're not alone in this. Derek's perfect life. Then there's Derek. He was always perfect. The son my parents wanted. The one who fit into their dream of success. By the time he was 22, Derek had already climbed his way up the corporate ladder. He was on the fast track, ready to inherit the family business. And my parents couldn't have been prouder. His wedding. Picture perfect. His job. Perfect. His life. Perfect. And where was I? Still struggling to get my foot in the door. Still trying to prove myself in a world where everyone else seemed to have it figured out. At family gatherings, he was the center of attention, the one who had everyone's ear. My mom would smile, her gaze drifting toward him, as if he were the only one who mattered. Derek's so smart, don't you think? She'd say to anyone who would listen. And I'd stand there, a shadow in the background, wanting so badly to be seen, to matter. And that's when I realized I was done being invisible. I was done with the family who ignored me, done with the endless years of feeling less than. I had a plan that would make them all see me. But they never expected the blow I was about to deliver. Are you ready to see what happens next? I can promise you it's not what you think. Don't forget to subscribe, because the best part is yet to come. I've always believed that the key to success is finding the right balance. Some call it ambition. Others call it stability. But for me, it was about carving out my space in a world that never really wanted me in it. Take a breath. I remember the first time I looked at my reflection and thought, I don't need them. But let's rewind a bit. To understand why I got to this point. To understand how I turned from the invisible daughter to the woman standing outside her family's lavish home, ready to change the game. Growing up in the shadow of perfection. I was raised in Ridgeview, Pennsylvania, a small town with big ideas. Everyone thought we had the perfect family. My dad, Frank, owned the largest hardware store in town. He was the pillar of the community, always smiling, always shaking hands, always the man of the hour. And my mom? Karen Well. She ran her little bakery that people in the entire county swore by. People even lined up at dawn for her pie. Perfect life. Perfect family. But behind the curtains of perfection, there was a world of judgment, high expectations, and a lot of silence. From a young age, I was the outcast, the one who didn't fit. While Derek, the golden boy, excelled in everything, I struggled to even be noticed. His grades were perfect, his athleticism off the charts, and he was the natural leader of the family. Everyone admired him. My parents loved him in a way they never did me. And no, it wasn't just me who noticed. I'll never forget the dinner table conversations where my mother would praise Derek in front of me, knowing full well the sting those words carried. Megan, why can't you be more like Derek? She'd ask as I sat there, pushing food around on my plate, wishing I could disappear. But I wasn't allowed to disappear. I had to sit there, play my part. After all, it was my fault if I didn't live up to their standards, right? But Derek, he was perfect. He never had to try, and he never had to prove anything to anyone. He just was. I spent my childhood being ignored, forgotten, and dismissed. In every family photo, I could almost see myself fading into the background. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was more like I was pushed there, whether I liked it or not. My mother's criticisms, my father's absent approval, Derek's perfection. It created a world where I was invisible, unwanted, like a ghost walking through my own life. But one thing was certain. I was tired of it. The first spark of change. When I went off to college, I told myself it would be different. I could reinvent myself, be someone my family would look at and see potential. I remember packing my bags, heart pounding with a new sense of freedom. For the first time, I was away from the crushing weight of their expectations. But old habits die hard. And soon enough, I was falling back into the same patterns. I took on small jobs while studying administrative assistant, part-time work here and there, but I was always looking for the approval that had been so elusive back home. Then came Jason. Jason was different. He saw me for me. He didn't care that I wasn't rich, or famous, or a corporate whiz like Derek. He was kind, supportive. I fell for him. Hard. We married young. Too young. I thought I had escaped my family's judgment. I thought I had found the one thing that could save me from all the pain. But that wasn't how it worked out. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere along the way, things started to slip. Jason wasn't the man I thought he was. The late nights at work became something else entirely. Text messages, distant looks, the same gut-wrenching feeling I had at family dinners, that sense of not enough, began creeping into my marriage. When I found the messages, I confronted him. His defense was weak. Excuses tumbling out like he didn't even care. It's not like that, Megan. It was just a fling. I should have walked away then, but I didn't. I stayed. For Lily. Lily was my everything. She was pure joy, the one thing I knew I did right. Her tiny fingers curled around mine, her laughter filling the empty spaces in my heart. I couldn't bear the thought of raising her alone. But despite my efforts to hold my marriage together, we couldn't make it work. Jason moved out before Lily turned 4. I didn't tell my family what happened. They didn't need to know about Jason's affair. I couldn't handle the judgment from them. They would say it was my fault. It always was. Has anyone ever made you feel like you weren't enough? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your stories. And trust me, you're not alone. But I'm about to tell you how I finally made sure they saw me. Really saw me. The family's continued disdain. When I got the divorce papers signed, I felt free for the first time in years. But that didn't mean the judgment stopped. My mother, still critical. Derek, the same. The worst part, every time I saw my family, they kept feeding me the same old line. If you just tried harder, Megan, maybe you'd have what Derek has. Maybe you'd have a real career. My career. As if being an assistant wasn't enough for them. As if my job wasn't real. They never respected me. They never respected what I had built for myself. They just couldn't see it. I wasn't a golden child like Derek. But I was working. I was learning. I was trying to create something for myself. And it didn't matter. It was always about Derek. Perfect. Successful Derek. The call that changed everything. And then came the phone call. The one that changed everything. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was at home, running through some designs for work, when my phone rang. It was my mom. I could feel my heart tighten in my chest before I even picked up. Megan, she said, her tone tight. Clipped. We're having a family gathering. Derek's been promoted. And we're celebrating. A family gathering. Again. For Derek. Always for Derek. I hesitated. Should I go? Should I even bother? I knew what would happen. I'd show up. And my mom would ask me the same tired questions. How's your little marketing job? Still with that same company. Megan. And Derek. He'd be the one everyone would praise. Like always. But then it hit me. Why should I keep playing the background role? I had to go. But not for them. Not to get their approval. I was going to go because it was time they finally saw me. I walked into the family reunion, knowing full well that my life was about to take a sharp turn. But what I didn't know was that this would be the moment when everything would start to unravel. My plan was simple, but the consequences, they were going to be far greater than I ever imagined. And now, I had to ask myself, was I ready to face them? To face Derek. To finally make them all see me. What do you think happens next? Will Megan finally get the respect she deserves? Or will her plan backfire? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe. The best part of the story is yet to come. The evening air felt thick with tension as I stood at the edge of my family's backyard, watching them laugh and mingle, as if everything was normal. The crisp string lights hung overhead like tiny stars, but none of them were shining on me. My family was gathered around, celebrating Derek's latest promotion, just another step in the well-oiled machine that was his perfect life. His wife, Natalie, was by his side, her smile radiant as she chatted with their friends. Clearly in her element. My parents, as always, couldn't stop bragging about Derek's great success to anyone who would listen. And me? I was just another backdrop to their picture-perfect life. The sting of being invisible burned every time I heard my mother's voice rise above the others. Derek is truly going places. You know, he just landed that big promotion at the firm. And he's doing so well with the business ventures. I could feel my stomach twist as I stood, unnoticed, holding my drink a little too tightly. Every inch of my body screamed to leave, to walk away and never look back. But I couldn't. Not now. Not when I had come so far. Megan. Over here. I turned at the sound of my name. And there she was, my mother. She waved me over like I was the last guest to arrive at a party I didn't want to attend. I hesitated for just a moment, then straightened my back and walked toward her. Sweetheart, come on! Don't just stand there like you're invisible, she said with that tone I knew too well, the one that hinted at disappointment, even if she didn't say it outright. Her eyes scanned me up and down before she looked away with that quick, dismissive flick. You've been so busy with work lately. Huh. Still working on that project management thing?
Project management thing?
The words stung like a slap. She couldn't even remember my job title, let alone appreciate the work I was doing. Project management thing. I'm a lead designer now, I corrected. But her attention had already shifted to someone else, as if the brief moment of acknowledgement had never happened. Derek, of course, was the center of everything. And it wasn't just tonight. It was every night. He was the man everyone admired, the man everyone wanted to be. He looked over at me as I stood there, the awkward silence between us hanging heavier than the conversation around me. There was that smirk again, the one that always made my blood boil. Well, look who finally showed up. Derek's voice rang out, louder than it needed to be, carrying that edge of condescension. His friends, all wearing the same smug, polished smiles, looked at me like they were watching some kind of circus performance. Derek. Don't, my mother interjected. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. No. Let her speak. Derek continued, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Tell us, Megan, what's it like still chasing that dream of yours? The one where you actually make something of yourself? The words hit me like a punch to the gut. But I stood there, forcing a smile, not letting them see the fury burning behind my eyes. I could feel it now, the weight of everything. The years of being nothing more than a footnote in their story. The years of trying to get them to look at me, to see me as someone who mattered. And still, it wasn't enough. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I could feel my hands trembling. And for a moment, I wondered if anyone noticed. They didn't. They never did. Have you ever been in a situation where you feel invisible? Like no matter what you do, You're always in the background. Drop a comment below. I want to hear your stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe to follow this journey. Trust me, it's about to get real. The breaking point. I couldn't stay in this. I couldn't keep pretending like their lives. Their constant praise of Derek didn't bother me. I didn't want to care anymore. But I still did. As Derek continued to boast about his promotion, I felt something inside me snap. I could hear him laughing about some big deal he'd closed, and I felt the walls closing in around me. This wasn't just about the promotion. This wasn't just about Derek's success. This was about a lifetime of watching him take what was supposed to be my place in the family. To have the love, the recognition, and the approval I'd always craved. And suddenly, everything hit me at once. Are you going to keep letting him get away with this? A voice whispered in my head. It wasn't my voice. It wasn't even my conscience speaking. It was something much deeper, something darker. The part of me that had been silenced for years. The part that had been constantly ignored. The part that was done being invisible. Done being the lesser child. And that was when I realized I didn't have to stay in the background anymore. A hidden strategy. I made a decision that night. It wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. It was about making them see me. Making them feel what I felt for all these years. I had a plan. A simple one. But it would sting. It would hurt them in ways they never expected. I was done with being the forgotten one. The afterthought. I wasn't going to take their approval. I wasn't going to wait for their approval. No. This time, I was going to take back control. Derek's promotion. It was the key to it all. Twist incoming. It wasn't just about winning their approval anymore. I had a weapon in my hands. A weapon they wouldn't see coming. And once it was set in motion, there would be no turning back. The game begins. I made my way through the crowd, putting on my best smile, keeping my posture straight. I approached Derek's friends, who were still in a huddle, laughing like I wasn't standing right next to them. They didn't even acknowledge my presence, as if I was still that girl in the corner, forgotten. But that was about to change. I stepped forward, my voice steady and calm, but loud enough for them to hear. Derek, I have to say, I'm really impressed with how far you've come. You know, all these years, I thought you were the perfect son, the perfect employee, the one everyone should look up to. Derek turned his head, his smug grin still plastered on his face. Glad to know you're finally paying attention, Megan. I smiled wider, my words dripping with calculated venom. Oh, I've been paying attention, Derek. But now, I'm really looking at you. The man who thinks he can do no wrong. The golden child who never had to work for anything. His smile faltered for a brief second, but he quickly recovered. What's this about? It's about the truth. Derek, I said, my voice low and cool. You've been lying to everyone here, and I'm just the person to finally tell them all about it. And that's when I dropped the bombshell. I was about to expose everything, every lie. Every secret they'd been hiding. Derek wasn't the perfect golden child. And tonight, they were all going to find out just how far the truth could go. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss what happens next. Are you ready for the truth to come out? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Trust me, this is just the beginning of a wild ride. Let's see how Derek handles the truth next. The room felt like it was closing in on me. Derek's expression shifted from that confident, arrogant smile to something more guarded. I could see his eyes flicker with confusion, like he was trying to figure out if I was bluffing or if I had something real on him. It wasn't just his pride at stake anymore. It was the perfect image of the family that my mother had meticulously curated for years. The golden boy wasn't so perfect anymore. And in that moment, standing there with the weight of a lifetime of rejection pressing down on me. I knew. This wasn't just a family gathering. This was my turning point. I could almost hear my mother's voice in my head. Megan, don't make a scene. Don't rock the boat. It's not worth it. But it was worth it. Every second of the silence, every judgmental glance, every moment I had been forced to play the invisible daughter. It was all leading to this. I wasn't just going to stand by anymore. I was going to take back control. I stepped closer to Derek, letting the tension build. Every word I said was deliberate, measured. You think you're untouchable? Don't you? Derek, I said, my voice quiet but cutting through the noise of the party like a knife. Everyone here thinks you're the star of the show. Perfect job. Perfect wife. Perfect life. But I'm the one who sees it. I see the cracks. Derek's face tightened, the smugness slowly draining from his features. His friends shifted uncomfortably behind him, their smiles fading as they realized something was off. My mother, standing a few feet away, shot me a look, a desperate, pleading look begging me to stop. But it was too late. I had waited too long. I had endured too much to back down now. I know what you're thinking. How far will Megan go to expose Derek? Will the truth finally come out? Drop a comment below and let me know what you think is coming next. And hit that subscribe button so you don't miss how this plays out. The plan. Setting the stage. I couldn't just reveal everything all at once. No. I needed to set the stage, let them feel the slow burn. I was going to make sure they knew who I was. And more importantly, how much I had been holding back. Remember when you told me I'd never make anything of myself? I asked Derek, my tone just casual enough to make him think I was still the same old invisible sister. You told me I should just be grateful for what I have and stop dreaming big. Funny how things turn out. He was silent now. His eyes flickered from me to his friends, and then back to me, like he was trying to gauge whether this was a game or if I was really about to lay all my cards on the table. Remember that client meeting you had last month? I continued. The one where you signed the multi-million-dollar deal with Anderson Tech. Funny thing, I happened to be there when you made that deal. I also happened to see how you, adjusted the numbers to make sure you got your bonus. His face went pale. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Derek, I said, my voice growing steadier. You've been playing everyone for a fool. And I've been watching. Watching. The word hung in the air, like a promise. It wasn't just a vague accusation anymore. It was something real. Something they could no longer ignore. Derek's friends exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether they should back him up or get out of the line of fire. But it wasn't their moment. It wasn't their fight. It was mine. The moment of truth. I could see the fear in Derek's eyes now. The perfect facade was cracking. He tried to compose himself, but his usual swagger was gone. All I had to do was keep pushing. Just a little more. You think you're the golden child, Derek, that you're immune to the consequences of your actions. But let me tell you something. No one gets away with everything forever. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. The things you've done, the lies you've told to everyone around you. It's all coming to light, and I'm the one who's going to make sure of it. I took a step back, glancing around at the people who had gathered around to watch. My mother's eyes were wide with panic, and Derek's jaw was clenched so tight I thought it might crack. For the first time in my life, I could see the cracks in the perfect family portrait. My entire life, I had been looking at the shiny, polished version of my family through a lens of envy. But now, it was clear. Everything they had built, everything they had convinced themselves of, was just a house of cards waiting to fall. Twist incoming. Just as I thought I was about to deliver the final blow, something unexpected happened. Derek's wife, Natalie, stepped forward. She hadn't said a word until now, and when she spoke, her voice was colder than I had ever heard it before. "Megan," she said, her tone sharp. "I think you've had your fun, but you're out of your depth here. You think you've got all the answers? But you're forgetting something." I raised an eyebrow, not knowing what to expect. "You're not the only one with secrets, Megan," Natalie continued, her eyes narrowing. "Maybe it's time you learned that." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. What did she mean? What secret was she talking about? The walls were closing in, and just as I thought I was finally in control, Natalie had just thrown another wrench into the gears. Wait, what did Natalie mean by that? What secret is she hiding? You won't want to miss how this unfolds. Comment below what you think is coming next. And be sure to hit that subscribe button. This story is far from over. The words Natalie threw at me hung in the air like smoke. And for a moment, I couldn't breathe. "You're not the only one with secrets, Megan," she had said, her eyes cold as ice. What did she mean? What did she know about me? Was I about to lose control of everything I had so carefully built? For a split second, I thought about backing down. The room had suddenly shifted, the weight of Natalie's words sinking in. But then I remembered why I was here, why I had come this far. I wasn't the helpless girl I used to be, cowering in the shadows. I wasn't going to let her let any of them keep me in that place anymore. What do you think is really going on with Natalie? What does she know about Megan? Comment below. Hit like and subscribe because the secrets are about to come out in ways no one saw coming. I took a slow breath, pushing away the rising tide of panic. Natalie's gaze didn't waver. It was as if she could sense my hesitation, like she could feel me wavering. But I couldn't afford to falter. Not now. "Don't you dare try to play me, Natalie," I said, my voice cutting through the thick tension. "If you've got something to say, say it. Don't try to intimidate me with half-baked threats. I'm done with the games." The crowd around us was starting to quiet down. Derek was watching now, his face a mixture of confusion and growing fear. My mother was standing a few feet away, her eyes wide, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her drink. She knew I was on the verge of something big, something she couldn't control. I could see the panic building in her too. Natalie shifted, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second before she regained her composure. She knew I was close to exposing everything, and she wasn't about to let that happen without a fight. "I don't think you understand the position you're in, Megan," she said, her voice soft, almost too soft. "You've been playing this game for so long, thinking you could take Derek down. But you're out of your league." I felt a pulse of adrenaline rush through me. The more she spoke, the more I realized what she was really doing, trying to manipulate me, trying to get under my skin, just like Derek always had. She wasn't fooling anyone, not anymore. I leaned in, narrowing the space between us. "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said, my tone as cold as hers. "You think that by protecting Derek, you're keeping everything in line. But what if I told you he's already gone too far?" That caught her off guard. She flinched, and for the briefest moment, the mask slipped. But before I could press my advantage, she took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and regained her cool. "You really don't get it, do you?" she said with a sickeningly sweet smile. "This isn't about Derek. This is about you. You're the one who doesn't belong here. You're the one who's always been the outsider." Her words hit harder than I expected, but they didn't break me. No, I wasn't going to be the person who cowered under pressure anymore. This was my moment. The moment I'd been planning for months. As I stared back at her, something clicked in my mind. A memory, long buried, resurfaced. Natalie wasn't just protecting Derek. She was involved in his dirty secrets. I had known something was off about her, but now I had the proof. The game was about to change. But would I be able to use it in time? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I had the upper hand now, and I wasn't going to let this moment slip away. I had come too far. Let's talk about the deal. Natalie, I said, my voice sharp, direct. The one you and Derek cooked up behind everyone's back. I'm sure you'd love for it to stay hidden. But you don't know who else is watching. She didn't react immediately, and for a moment, I thought I had pushed too far. But then the tiniest shift in her expression told me everything I needed to know. She knew I had her. This is the moment everything changes. Do you think Megan's got enough to expose Derek and Natalie? Let me know what you think will happen next. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated. The confession. The air felt charged, like we were all holding our breath. I could feel every set of eyes in the room on me. My family, Derek's friends, everyone was waiting for the next move. The next move wasn't just about exposing Derek. It was about turning everything on its head. I know about the emails. Natalie, I said slowly, deliberately. The ones you sent to Anderson Tech about inflating the numbers for the deal. The ones you thought no one would ever see. Her face went white. She opened her mouth, probably to deny it. But no words came out. For a moment, it felt like the world had stopped spinning. My heart was pounding in my chest. But I couldn't stop now. I'm not just your sister anymore. Derek, I said, turning to face him. I'm the one who's going to make sure everyone knows the truth about you. I could see his mind racing. And for the first time in my life, I could feel the power shift in my direction. The golden child wasn't so golden anymore. Just as I thought I had them cornered, another voice interrupted. My mother, standing behind me, stepped forward, shaking her head. Stop. Just stop. Megan, she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. You have no idea what you're doing. You think exposing Derek will fix everything? You're wrong. You'll destroy everything. Your father, he's been in on it too. The words hit me like a freight train. My father. My mind raced. And everything I thought I knew about my family unraveled in an instant. What did she mean? Had my father been involved all along? Was everything a lie? This wasn't just about Derek anymore. This was about everything I had ever known. And now, I had to decide how far was I willing to go. Can you believe what just happened? Megan's world just turned upside down. And I'm sure you're dying to know what happens next. Hit that like button. Comment your theories. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming in the next part. This is far from over. I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding in my chest, like it was trying to escape. The words my mother had just dropped, "Your father's been in on it too," echoed in my ears, louder than any sound in the room. My father. For years, I had thought he was the one constant in my life, the one who wasn't like the rest of them, the ones who rejected me, ignored me, and dismissed me as the problem child. My father had always been the silent protector, the man who never said much, but was always there when I needed him. Or so I thought. But now, this, my own mother telling me he had been involved in everything. The betrayal felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, suffocating me. I stood there, frozen, staring at my mother. Her face was pale, and her hands shook as she held on to her drink, her knuckles white. She was a wreck. But I couldn't feel sorry for her. I couldn't feel anything but rage. "Are you serious right now?" I whispered, the words trembling with disbelief. You're telling me Dad's been involved in this the whole time? In everything? My mother didn't answer at first. She just stood there, her eyes not meeting mine. She was avoiding my gaze, and that silence spoke volumes. It was enough to confirm it. She nodded slowly. Megan, your father has his own ways of protecting this family. The things he's done, they weren't easy decisions, but they were necessary. The words cut deeper than anything Derek had said, more painful than any of his mockery. She wasn't just protecting Derek. She was protecting the man who had raised me, the one who had pretended to be above it all. And now, that man, the one I thought I could trust more than anyone, was just as dirty as the rest of them. I couldn't hold back anymore. The anger surged through me, flooding my body like a tidal wave. You don't get it, do you? I spat, my voice rising. You've been covering up for them all these years. For Derek. For Dad. You let them lie. Let them deceive everyone. And you were okay with it. But now that I'm the one fighting back, you want me to just stop? You want me to pretend it's all okay? My mother took a step toward me, but I held up my hand. I couldn't hear it anymore. I didn't want her apologies. I didn't want to hear how she had tried to protect me. All I could think about was the years of silence, of being ignored, of being told I wasn't enough. Derek, who had been standing in the background, was finally moving. He took a step toward me, his face a mix of anger and desperation. You don't know what you're talking about. Megan, he said, his voice low. This isn't about us anymore. This is about you tearing our family apart. Tearing our family apart. The irony hit me like a slap. I wasn't the one who tore the family apart. They had done that. Long before I ever stepped foot back into this house, they had already ruined everything. Family. I laughed bitterly. What family? You mean the family that only ever cared about you? Derek. The family that ignored me my whole life. That made me feel like I was nothing. That family. I could see the guilt in his eyes for a split second before he masked it. He wasn't used to me standing up to him. He wasn't used to seeing the side of me that had been hidden for so long. I'm not going to stand here and let you destroy everything I've worked for, Derek said, his voice tightening with frustration. You think this is some game? You think you can just ruin everything for us? You don't understand what's at stake. But I did understand. I understood more than he ever could. Do you think I don't know what's at stake? I shot back, my voice cutting through his. I've spent my entire life trying to prove I'm worth something to this family. And all you've done is remind me that I'm not good enough. But guess what? I'm done. I'm done playing by your rules. Derek, I'm done pretending I don't have a voice. You can feel the tension. Can't you? Megan's on the edge, and everything is about to explode. Will she finally get the respect she deserves? Or will Derek and her family tear everything apart? Let me know what you think is coming next. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The weight of the truth. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure how I was going to follow through. The truth was, I was terrified. Terrified of what I might lose. Terrified of how far I'd already gone. But I couldn't stop now. I had nothing left to lose. My mother's approval. Gone. Derek's approval. Never had it. My father's. A lie. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. I was chasing something much more important, my own dignity. I took another step back, putting some distance between myself and the chaos swirling around me. I had to stay focused. I had a plan, and I was going to see it through to the end. But first, I needed to gather the pieces. I turned to face Derek and my mother one last time. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice cold and steady. This isn't a game. And it's not just about me anymore. This is about everything you've built. Your lies. Your secrets. They're all coming out. But just as I thought I had them cornered, just as I prepared to expose the truth, I received a call I wasn't expecting. It was from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, someone who knew more than they should. The screen on my phone lit up with the name Lily. I stared at the phone in my hand. My heart skipped a beat. What was Lily doing calling me now? What did she know? Was this the moment everything fell apart? The phone vibrated in my hand, and my heart skipped a beat. I stared at the screen, at the name that had appeared, Lily. She was just 6 years old. My little girl. So innocent. So pure. I could hear her voice in my mind, sweet and untainted by the bitterness that had consumed my family for years. But now, her name on that screen meant something was terribly wrong. What could she possibly know? What was happening right now? I swiped the screen, my fingers trembling. Lily. My voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Mama. Her small, uncertain voice came through the phone, and the weight in my chest only grew heavier. Mama. They're being mean to me. They said I can't talk to you anymore. A lump formed in my throat as I squeezed the phone tighter. I felt the walls closing in again, the suffocating pressure of my family, of Derek, of my mother, the very people who were supposed to support me, now using my child against me. Sweetie, I whispered, trying to keep my voice calm, even though I was falling apart inside. They said you're bad, that you don't belong here, that you're not part of the family anymore. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had left this family for one reason: to protect my daughter from the very same toxicity I had endured growing up. And now, they were poisoning her against me. They said I was bad too. Lily continued, her voice cracking, that we don't deserve to be here. I don't want to leave you. Mama, I don't want to be bad. My stomach twisted as my heart shattered. I wanted to run to her. I wanted to gather her up in my arms and shield her from everything. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I finished what I had started. Sweetheart. Listen to me. My voice was steady now, firm. But underneath it all, I felt the crack of my own weakness. You're not bad. Lily, you're my brave girl. And you'll never be bad. I love you more than anything.
Okay.
But Mama, she sniffed, and I could hear her trying to keep it together. What if they're right? The silence between us felt unbearable. I could feel her small hand reaching out for me, but there was nothing I could do to close the distance. I had to let her know the truth. I had to make her see that this wasn't about her. I'm going to make everything right. Lily, I promise you, I'm going to fix it, I whispered, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. You're not alone. I'm coming for you. I'll make sure of it. I ended the call with my heart pounding in my chest, feeling like it might burst. What had they done? What had Derek, my mother, and the whole damn family done to my little girl? They had turned their cruelty, their brokenness, on the one person I swore to protect. But this was my fight now. Not just for me, but for her. I wasn't going to let them ruin her. Not like they'd ruined me. Did you expect this twist? What do you think Megan will do now that Lily's been dragged into this family war? Drop your theories in the comments below. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. This story is reaching its final, explosive moments. The reckoning begins. I didn't wait another second. The plan I had carefully constructed, the one I'd been working on for months, was now about to go into full effect. Everything I'd kept bottled up, Every moment of weakness, every ounce of pain I had suffered, it was all leading to this. I left the family reunion in a haze, my mind racing. My mother's words, Derek's smirk, Natalie's cold smile, they haunted me. They couldn't get away with this anymore. I had no choice but to break the silence. I had no choice but to expose them. Every lie, every deception. I walked to my car, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't know if I was more terrified of what I was about to do, or the possibility that they'd turn everything around and make me the villain. But it didn't matter anymore. My daughter was depending on me, and I was done being their punching bag. The first thing I did was send the email to Anderson Tech's executives, the ones who had been unaware of the fraudulent numbers Derek and Natalie had submitted. I attached the proof, emails, signed contracts, and a series of incriminating documents I'd gathered over the months. It was all there, everything they had tried to cover up. I was going to make sure they understood the gravity of what they'd done. I didn't stop there. The next call was to a journalist who had been sniffing around the corporate world for a while. I had met him once through a contact in the marketing world. Now, he owed me a favor. I made sure he had everything he needed to get the story out, to make it public. The dominoes were falling. The secrets, the lies, the twisted web my family had woven, it was all about to collapse. But what struck me the most was the realization of how far I had come. The girl who once cowered in the shadows of her perfect family, trying to please everyone, was now the one calling the shots. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and most importantly, protecting Lily from the same fate I had endured. As I sat there, watching the first pieces of my plan fall into place, the phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Lily. It wasn't Derek, or Natalie, or even my mother. It was someone I didn't expect, the person who had been silently watching from the sidelines. The name on the caller ID made my blood run cold. Paul. I picked up the phone, knowing everything was about to change. What did Paul know? Why was he calling now? And what was his role in this whole mess? The phone buzzed in my hand, and my heart skipped a beat. I stared at the screen, reading the name that had appeared. Lily, my daughter, my sweet, innocent girl. Her name was the only thing I had left to hold on to, the only pure part of my world. But now, seeing her name light up on my phone, I knew something had gone terribly wrong. What could she possibly know? What was happening right now? I tapped the screen, barely able to focus, my hands shaking. Lily! My voice cracked as I answered, desperate to hear her voice again. Mama. Her small, shaky voice came through the phone, breaking my heart into pieces. Mama, they're being mean to me. They said I can't talk to you anymore. A cold shiver ran through my body. The anger I'd been holding back, the pain of betrayal, bubbled to the surface. They were poisoning her against me. Who? Sweetie, I whispered, my voice trembling as I tried to hold it together. My heart was breaking for her. They said you're bad, that you don't belong here, that you're not part of the family anymore. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. My own mother, Derek, and now they had dragged my daughter into this. My daughter, my little girl, was caught in the same web of lies and cruelty that I had spent my whole life trying to escape. They said I was bad too. Lily continued, her voice barely audible through her sniffles. That we don't deserve to be here. I don't want to leave you. Mama, I don't want to be bad. My stomach turned as I felt the weight of everything crushing down on me. I had fought so hard to protect Lily from the very people who had torn me apart, and now they were doing the same thing to her. I squeezed my eyes shut, holding back the tears that threatened to spill. I had to stay strong. For her. I had to stay strong. Sweetheart, listen to me, I said, my voice now steady, even though inside I was crumbling. You're not bad. You're my brave girl, and you'll never be bad. I love you more than anything. Okay. But Mama, she sniffled, what if they're right? The silence between us was deafening. What was I supposed to say to that? I'm going to make everything right. Lily, I promise you, I'm going to fix it, I whispered, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. You're not alone. I'm coming for you. I'll make sure of it. The phone call ended. My hands shook as I put the phone down. What had they done to her? How far had they gone? I was no longer fighting for just myself. I was fighting for her. I was going to expose them all. I would destroy their world, the same way they had tried to destroy mine. And I wasn't going to stop until I made sure Lily was safe. Did you expect this twist? Megan is now fighting not only for herself, but for her daughter. Lily, how do you think she'll expose Derek and her family? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. This story is far from over. The plan comes into motion. I didn't waste a second. The pieces were all in place now. The emails, the documents, the contacts I had made, all of it was ready. I could feel the anger burning inside me, pushing me forward. I wasn't just going to expose Derek anymore. I wasn't just going to ruin his life. Now, this was about everything. It was about making sure they knew the truth. It was about protecting Lily and making sure she never felt the way I had, like she was nothing. I grabbed my laptop and sent the email, the one to Anderson Tech's executives. I attached every document, every email chain I had gathered, everything that could ruin Derek's precious reputation, the fraud, the lies. It was all there, and it was going to be known. Then, I called the journalist, the one who had been sniffing around the corporate world. He owed me a favor, and I wasn't going to let it slip by. He needed the information, and he was going to get it. The pieces were falling into place. The truth was about to come out. I could feel the weight of everything building as I prepared to hit send. Every lie, every secret that had been buried for so long was now about to be exposed. Just as I thought the final steps were in motion, I received another call. This one wasn't from Lily. It wasn't from Derek or my mother. It wasn't even from the journalist. It was from someone I never expected. The name on the screen made my blood run cold. Paul. I answered the phone, my heart racing. Paul, I asked, trying to steady my voice. I think we need to talk. His voice came through the phone. Calm. But there was an edge to it. I know what you're doing. And I'm here to help. But help with what? What did Paul know? What role had he played in this twisted family drama? What does Paul know? Is he here to help Megan? Or is he another part of the mystery? Drop your theories below and make sure to subscribe because the truth is coming out. And you won't want to miss the explosive conclusion. Story 2. It's been 3 months since that day. The day I walked into my parents' house with my daughter Lily and watched my brother Derek slap her across the face. A 6-year-old. And the worst part, my parents, they laughed. They laughed. I didn't react. I couldn't. Not then. I just stood there, frozen. I could feel my heart beating in my chest. But my hands were still. I think I might have been in shock. How could I not have been? My daughter, my little girl, was just smacked by her uncle. And nobody cared. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout. To fight. But I didn't. Because, if you're me, you know better than to get caught up in those moments. You learn to stay calm. To hold everything inside. I stayed quiet, even though the anger inside me was boiling over, threatening to spill out. I stayed quiet, and I let them think they had won. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. But before we get into all that, before I tell you how I took down everything they thought was invincible, let me know where you're watching from. Drop a comment. Hit the like button if you've ever felt that rage. And be sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss how this story ends. Trust me, the Thompson family, a glamorous, toxic hierarchy. Let's rewind a little bit, and let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Audrey Thompson. I'm 30 years old, and I've spent my entire life feeling like a stranger in my own family. A family that's supposed to love you unconditionally. Right? Yeah. Not for me. You see? There's Derek, my golden boy brother. Perfect in every way. Athletic, charming, and everything my parents ever wanted in a son. He didn't have to try. He didn't have to do anything. And yet, somehow, he was the one who always got the love, the praise, the attention. As for me, I was always the disappointment, the one who could never measure up, no matter how hard I tried, no matter how many A's I brought home, how many awards I won. I could have saved the world, and my family would have still looked right past me. Growing up in the Thompson household meant living under constant judgment. My parents, both corporate people, had this image they wanted to maintain. Success, wealth, perfection. But it was all an illusion. Beneath the shiny surface, things were broken. There was this one memory that always stuck with me. I was 16, sitting at the dinner table, trying to explain to my parents why I'd missed a school event. I thought they'd understand. But instead, my father Howard, a successful attorney, just looked at me, shaking his head. "Why can't you be more like Derek?" he'd said, the words cutting deep. Derek, who was out winning medals, running circles around me. Derek, who could do no wrong. I sat there, silent, knowing full well that nothing I did would ever be enough. And that's when I realized something. It wasn't just about me. It was about the way my family treated success. It wasn't about who you were. It was about what you brought to the table. And I wasn't the right kind of success. Not in their eyes. But I wasn't going to let them break me. Not anymore. The years I spent trying to gain their approval, it was all for nothing. So, I made a promise to myself. A promise that, when the time came, I'd find my way out. I'd leave them behind. I'd show them that I didn't need them to succeed, that I could make it on my own. And I did. I got into Stanford on my own merit. I didn't need them for that. But I still held on to the idea that, somehow, someday, they'd see me for who I was. They'd finally realize I wasn't just the troublemaker. I was enough. The moment that changed everything. But that moment, the one with Derek and Lily, it changed something in me. It was like a switch flipped. For the first time in my life, I felt nothing but rage. Rage at how my brother had treated my daughter. Rage at how my parents just stood there, not saying a word. How they stood by, letting Lily, suffer. I stood there, staring at them all, seeing the faces I had been trying to impress my whole life. And in that moment, I realized something I should have known all along. They weren't my family. Not in the way I thought. They weren't the people I could depend on. They weren't the people who loved me. They were just obstacles. Obstacles I'd been trying to win over for far too long. And that's when I knew. I was done trying. Done playing their game. The game where you give, and give, and give, and they take, but never enough. They always wanted more. I was done being their punching bag. Done being the person they used to prop up their precious Derek. It was time for a new game. My game. The plan begins. I'm not going to lie. I didn't just jump into this blindly. I had a plan. I always had a plan. Because one thing I learned growing up in that house, smart girls don't just study books. We study people. I had spent years watching them, observing their every move, noticing their patterns. I knew what made them tick. I knew what they cared about. And most importantly, I knew their weaknesses. My first move. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was about survival. I'd just graduated from Stanford, and I needed to secure my future. So, I took the first step. I went to my professors, told them I had a family emergency that had ruined my computer. They were understanding, more understanding than my family had ever been. I rewrote my thesis, and to no surprise, I made Dean's List again. I quietly accepted a full-ride scholarship to Stanford for my master's. I knew my parents would never have expected that, but while I was securing my future, I started putting my plan into motion. I collected every piece of evidence, every little thing I could find. I knew about my mom embezzling money from her job at the church. I knew about my dad's affair with his secretary. I even knew about Derek cheating his way through high school. I had everything, but I wasn't going to use it all at once. Oh no. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. No. I was going to make them wait. I was going to make them suffer the way I had. And when the time came, they wouldn't see me coming. This is the cliffhanger that leaves the audience hanging, eager for the next part. The setup is laid out. Audrey has been mistreated for years. But now, she's taking control. The quiet buildup of her plan, combined with the shock of seeing Derek's violent actions, sets up an intense, emotional payoff for what's to come. You'd think that after all these years of being ignored, of being the family's afterthought, I would have learned to just walk away. But let me tell you something, there's something about family, about the ties that bind, that just won't let go. They always find a way to suck you back in, to make you feel like you owe them, like you have to be the perfect daughter, the one they can parade around to make themselves look good. I used to think I needed that, but now I see it. Now I know it's not me who's broken, it's them. I remember when I was growing up, it was like living in a house of mirrors. The reflection I saw was never mine. It was the one they wanted me to see. Always trying to meet their expectations. Always trying to be the good daughter. But no matter what I did, no matter how many A's I brought home, or how much I pushed myself, I was never good enough. There's this one memory that sticks with me, and I think it sums up the whole mess. I was 16, sitting at the dinner table with my parents. Derek was there too. Of course, my golden boy brother. Always the one who did everything right. Always the one who was praised for breathing. And me. I just sat there, feeling invisible, wondering how I ended up in this mess. Mom and Dad were talking about Derek's latest achievements. And then out of nowhere, Dad turned to me. Why can't you be more like Derek? Look at him. He's got everything figured out. He knows what it means to work hard. And there it was. That familiar sting, the one that made me feel like I was nothing. Like no matter how hard I tried, I would never be the perfect kid they wanted me to be. But the worst part wasn't the words. No. The worst part was what came next. The silence. That cold, suffocating silence from Mom. She just looked at me, her gaze so full of disappointment. Like she had already written me off. Like I wasn't worth the effort. In that moment, I knew I'd never be enough for them. No matter how much I succeeded. No matter what I did. But it didn't break me. Not then. It was the moment I started to realize that I wasn't playing their game anymore. I wasn't going to bend to their will, to their expectations. I had a bigger plan. A plan where I didn't need them to be successful. A plan where I would rise on my own. Family and the facade of perfection. Now, don't get me wrong on the outside. Everything seemed perfect. The perfect family. The perfect house. The perfect image. We lived in a big, shiny house on the outskirts of Chicago, where everything screamed, "We've made it." The lawn was always manicured, the car always spotless, and family gatherings were like scenes out of a magazine. But the truth was far messier. Mom was always the picture of grace, the social butterfly who hosted dinners, made sure the house looked flawless, and ran her little charity events. But behind all that, there was a coldness I couldn't ignore. I never got the warmth that I craved from her. I never got the love or the encouragement that Derek did. I got the critiques. The "you should do better" speeches. The comments about how I should act, how I should dress, how I should be. And then there was Dad. My dad. The lawyer who always had to be in control. The one who had the perfect career, the perfect life, and the perfect family at least. In his eyes, he expected perfection from me, just like he expected it from Derek. He was always quick to point out what I did wrong, to make sure I knew I was never quite as good as him. Derek. Derek was the golden child, always the one who made the grades, who excelled in sports, who could charm anyone with that fake, calculated smile of his. And no matter how many times he messed up, no matter how many times he lied or cheated his way through life, he was still the favorite. I used to try to compete with him. I used to think that if I just did better, tried harder, they'd finally notice me. But no matter what I did, I was always the backup, the second choice, the one who was never quite enough, the family reunion that broke me. So, here we are. 3 months ago, I decided to take Lily to our annual family reunion. I hadn't seen them in years. Honestly, I didn't even want to go. But Lily had been asking to spend time with her grandparents, and I figured it might be a good opportunity. Maybe I was hoping they'd finally see me as someone worth acknowledging. Maybe I thought I could finally show them that I wasn't the screw-up they made me out to be. The house was as grand as ever, standing at the edge of a pristine lake in Michigan. The lawn was green and immaculate, the stone driveway lined with sleek cars. When we pulled up, Derek's BMW was already there, parked in front of the house like it always was. It was funny how everything about that place screamed success, but it always felt empty. Lily jumped out of the car, eager to see her cousins. She ran toward the house with that innocent excitement only a child could have. And for a moment, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe this time, things would be better. But the moment we walked through that door, it hit me. It always hit me. The coldness, the judging eyes, the fake smiles. "Look who decided to show up." Derek's voice echoed from the living room, dripping with that all-too-familiar condescension. My parents greeted us with stiff smiles, nodding their heads like they were doing me a favor by acknowledging I was there. As always, my mom turned her attention straight to Lily, like I was invisible. She smiled at her, kissed her on the cheek, and made some comment about how much Lily had grown. The usual routine. But I wasn't invisible. I was there. And I wasn't going to just let it happen again. The incident that changed everything. It was only an hour or so into the evening when it happened. Lily, full of excitement, was showing off her new song to everyone. She was singing her heart out, her little voice filling the room with innocence. But then Derek spoke. "Lily, you need to be quiet. Nobody cares about your little song. You don't want to be annoying, do you?" His words were like a slap in the face. I could feel my blood boil. but I kept it together. Lily, on the other hand, froze. Her smile disappeared as she shrank back from the crowd. That's when it hit me. Lily was just like me. She was getting crushed by the same judgment, the same disdain that I had lived through my whole life. And then Derek did something that made my blood run cold. He slapped her, right across the face. A 6-year-old girl, my daughter, his niece. My mind couldn't even process it at first. All I could do was stare at him. But in that moment, I made a decision. It wasn't just Derek. It wasn't just my parents. It was all of them. And I was done. It took every ounce of control I had not to lose it right then and there. I watched Derek stand there, with that smug grin on his face, his hands still hovering in the air as if nothing had happened. My daughter, Lily, was holding her cheek, tears welling up in her eyes, the same tears I had hidden so many times myself. It was like looking at myself through her. The room fell silent for a moment, just enough to feel the weight of what had happened. My parents sat there, staring, frozen. I didn't know if they were shocked or if they just didn't care. But in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Lily, my little girl, who was finally starting to feel the suffocating weight of this family. I could feel my chest tighten. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. But I knew one thing for sure. Derek had crossed the line, and there was no going back now. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was about justice. I had always known that my family wasn't like the ones you saw on TV. We weren't the kind of family who stuck together through thick and thin. No, we were the kind of family that made you feel invisible, like a second-rate option. My entire life, I'd been playing their game, the game where you give and give and give, but they never even see you. And now, they had hurt my daughter. I watched Derek as he turned away, as if nothing had happened. He didn't even apologize. Just walked right back into the crowd, laughing and chatting like the whole world still revolved around him. That's when I knew the facade was crumbling. They were finally going to see who I really was. I stood there for a second, breathing deeply, trying to keep the anger from boiling over. I wasn't going to react. Not yet. But they had no idea what was coming. The plan begins. By the time Lily had stopped crying, I had already begun to make my move. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do just yet, but I knew I had to do something. This wasn't just about standing up for her. This was about standing up for me. I'd spent so long trying to please them, trying to be the person they wanted me to be. But that person wasn't real. It never was. Lily needed me to be strong, to show her that you don't have to take this crap from anyone, especially not from family. I excused myself from the group, pretending to go check on Lily. But what I was really doing was making sure no one followed me. I didn't want them to see what I was planning. But I couldn't just let this go. I had to take control. It wasn't just for me anymore. It was for her. I stepped outside onto the back porch. The air was cool and crisp. I could feel the tension in my chest, like a knot I couldn't quite untangle. I looked out at the lake, the same lake I'd spent summers by when I was a kid. The water shimmered under the fading light, but I couldn't focus on the beauty. All I could see was the anger burning in my gut. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone. I started scrolling, looking through old messages, old emails, things I had saved just in case I ever needed them. My mom's emails where she complained about me, where she told me I would never live up to Derek's standards. My dad's messages, where he tried to manipulate me into doing what he wanted. And, of course, Derek's texts, full of self-importance and condescension. But I needed more. I needed something big, something that would make them pay for what they'd done. I knew just where to look. The family business. The one thing they all cared about more than anything. The one thing that could bring them to their knees. The one thing I had been studying, gathering intel on for months. I wasn't just going to stand there and let them walk all over me anymore. I was going to use their own weaknesses against them. Breaking the silence. That night, after dinner, I stayed behind. The house was still buzzing with conversation. But I had a different plan. I wasn't interested in the small talk. I wasn't interested in hearing Derek boast about his latest achievement, or listening to my mother gush over how proud she was of him. No. I was thinking bigger. While everyone else was distracted, I quietly slipped upstairs and into my parents' office. The door was slightly ajar. I glanced around, making sure no one was coming, and I stepped inside. My parents' office was exactly what you'd expect, perfectly organized, spotless. There were expensive leather chairs, mahogany bookshelves filled with trophies, awards, and family photos. But there was one thing that stood out to me. The safe in the corner. I'd seen my father enter that safe countless times. It wasn't just for show. There were documents in there that no one but him had access to. Documents that could destroy everything they had worked so hard to build. And I knew exactly what was in that safe. I couldn't just leave this family without taking what was rightfully mine. The business. The inheritance. Everything they had taken from me for so many years. It was time to take back what they owed me. And I was going to do it quietly, carefully, and with precision. They wouldn't know what hit them. The moment of truth. I slowly walked over to the safe, the adrenaline in my veins. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. No. This was the feeling of control, the feeling of finally getting my revenge. I typed in the code I had memorized over the years, the one my father always used, the one I had learned through countless hours of watching and listening. The safe clicked open. I opened the door, my heart pounding in my chest. There it was. The documents that could ruin everything. The legal papers, the financial statements, the hidden assets. I grabbed everything I could, stuffed it into my bag, and closed the safe without a sound. I felt a rush of power, the kind I hadn't felt in years. This was it. I was finally going to have the last word. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. I wasn't going to let them make me feel small ever again. The night was thick with tension, almost suffocating. The house was quiet now. The laughter and chatter from earlier all but faded away. But inside, I could still feel the heat of that moment, the slap, the look on Derek's face, the silence that hung in the air like a heavy cloud. I'd never forget that moment. It was the catalyst, the point of no return. As I walked back into the living room, my hands were shaking, my heart still racing. I could barely stand to look at anyone, but especially not Derek. That smug look on his face, as if he were untouchable, invincible. He had no idea what was coming. I made my way past the group, ignoring the hushed voices that followed me, trying to pretend like everything was fine. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need anything from them. What they didn't know was that I had already taken the first step to bring it all down. All the pieces I'd been collecting over the years, all the lies, the manipulation, the little cracks in the facade, they were all adding up, and I was about to exploit every single one of them. I had learned long ago that the best way to win against people like my family was not through brute force, but through strategy, patience. The game was long, but I knew how to play it. Every little victory had to be carefully timed, and the time for patience had come to an end. That night, I lay awake in the guest bedroom, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything that had happened. I could hear Derek laughing downstairs, probably telling some story about how poor Audrey couldn't handle a little family fun. But deep down, I knew they were all clueless. They had no idea what I had in store. The shift. It was time to act. No more playing nice. No more pretending I was okay with how things had been. I had spent years convincing myself that things would get better, that my family would change, that one day they'd see me for who I really was. But every time, I was let down. Every time, they proved that I wasn't enough. Not for them. Not for anyone. I was just the backup. The other daughter. The disappointment. But I wasn't going to let them get away with it anymore. I had a plan. A plan that would finally make them see me. Make them feel what I had felt all these years. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. It was about finally standing up for myself, for Lily, and for everything I had sacrificed just to try and fit into their perfect world. The first step of my plan was simple. Gather everything. Every little piece of evidence. Every bit of information I could find that could expose their lies. I had already done most of the work. I knew about the affair my father had been hiding for years. I knew about the money my mom had secretly been funneling from her charity. I knew Derek had been skimming money from the family business for months. They had been lying to me, lying to each other, and using me as their punching bag for years. Now, it was time for the truth to come out. The strategy. I spent the next few days meticulously putting my plan into motion. It wasn't just about exposing them. It was about making them feel the humiliation I had felt for so long. My family had always made me feel small, but I was going to make them see what it felt like to be completely exposed, to be powerless. I knew I couldn't do it all at once. No, that would have been too easy. I needed them to feel the slow burn, to watch their world unravel piece by piece. So, I started small, collecting incriminating texts, digging through emails, making sure everything was airtight. I didn't trust anyone, but I knew I needed allies. So, I reached out to a few people I knew could help me. First, I called my old friend from law school, Karen. She was sharp, resourceful, and most importantly, she owed me a favor. I knew she could help me with the legal side of things, especially when it came to the family business. She agreed to help, but with one condition. She wanted in on the fallout. She wanted to be the one to take them down in court. I smiled to myself. Perfect. The next piece of the puzzle was Derek. As much as I hated to admit it, he was still the key. If I could get him to slip, get him to show his true colors in front of everyone, it would be game over. Derek was good at hiding his tracks, but I knew his weakness. He was greedy. He'd do anything to protect the family business, even if it meant crossing a line. I started working on him slowly, subtly, nudging him in the right direction. I began bringing up the family business in casual conversation, pretending to show interest in his work. The more I fed him my support, the more he started to open up. He didn't know it, but he was walking straight into my trap. All I needed was one mistake, one moment of weakness, the moment of truth. A week later, the opportunity presented itself. Derek had been bragging about his latest promotion at work, how he had secured a big deal for the company, how he was finally being recognized as the family's savior. It was all just too perfect. He didn't realize it, but he was digging his own grave. I invited him out for drinks, nothing fancy, just a quiet bar in the city. He agreed, like he always did, thinking I was still that little sister who just wanted to be included in his world. He was wrong. We sat in a corner booth, and, as usual, Derek started talking about himself. The alcohol flowed, and so did his ego. I asked him questions, pretending to be interested, letting him talk. And then, when I had him right where I wanted him, I dropped the bomb. Derek, do you ever worry about how much the family business is being manipulated. You know, all those people that Mom and Dad have been using behind the scenes. His face froze. For a second, I thought he might choke on his drink. What do you mean? He asked, his voice a little too tight. I just smiled. Oh. Nothing. Just curious. You've been so successful lately. I just wondered if you'd ever noticed anything strange. Like, where the money's really going. You know? He didn't say anything at first. Just took a long sip of his beer. Then, with a sharp glance, he leaned in closer. I don't know what you're getting at, Audrey. But you better be careful. People who dig too deep tend to get hurt. I felt the cold rush of adrenaline. It was time to make my move. The night I met Derek for drinks was a turning point. Everything that had been simmering under the surface for years, the hurt, the anger, the resentment finally erupted. But what really got to me wasn't Derek's attempt at threatening me. It was the realization that this was just the beginning. I had gotten him to bite. I had made him show his hand. Just a crack in the perfect facade he'd spent years building. But now it was time to push further. I kept my composure as we finished our drinks and parted ways. Derek had gone back to his polished, high-powered life, and I went home to plan the next move. My heart was racing, but it wasn't fear. It was excitement. The first step of my plan had been to plant the seed of doubt in Derek's mind. But now the real work began. I needed leverage. Real leverage, something that would shake him to his core and make him realize that I wasn't just some broken, invisible sister. I wasn't going to beg for their approval anymore. I was going to tear their world apart. A plan in motion. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose. I had known the family business inside and out for years. Dad was always obsessed with it, always pushing us to carry the legacy and all that nonsense. But what Dad didn't know was that I had been quietly taking notes, following the money trail, and learning about the underbelly of everything they'd built. I spent the day on the phone, speaking with Karen, my old law school friend, about the next steps. She had agreed to help, but she had her own agenda. She wanted to make sure that, when the dust settled, she'd be the one to take down my family legally, and I wasn't going to argue with her. In this game, I needed every ally I could get. All right, Karen said, her voice low and focused. I've got what we need. We can move on this now. But we do it carefully. One wrong step, and this whole thing blows up in our faces. I nodded, feeling the weight of the decision settle over me. This wasn't just about getting even anymore. This was about taking control of my life. The family had been suffocating me for so long, and now I was going to force them to see me for who I really was. Karen continued, I've got the financials you need. The offshore accounts your dad set up, the ones no one's ever talked about. I can help you expose them. But you've got to be smart. We can't just go public. Not yet. I swallowed hard. I wasn't used to dealing with this kind of stuff. This wasn't the world I grew up in. But I didn't have a choice. The more I learned, the clearer it became. My father had been running a web of corruption, and I was going to be the one to unravel it. I spent the next few days combing through the files Karen sent over. Each document, each transaction, each hidden dollar painted a clearer picture of just how deep my father's deception ran. But it wasn't just him. Derek was complicit too. As I dug, I found emails, transactions, even personal messages that tied him into the whole mess. My brother, my golden boy, had been embezzling money from the company for years, using my name to cover his tracks. He had been siphoning funds from accounts my father thought were secure. Derek had always been the golden child, the one everyone trusted, the one everyone thought would save the family legacy. But now, I had proof that he was the one sabotaging it. And that's when it hit me. I didn't need to destroy them all at once. No, I needed to turn them against each other. Make them question everything they thought they knew. Derek was already slipping up, and it was only a matter of time before he'd crack. The first move. I started small. One evening, I called Derek and pretended to be concerned. I knew he was up to something, and I played my part well, feeding him the perfect line. "Derek," I said, my voice calm. "I've been thinking. I'm worried about Dad's accounts. I'm worried we've been blind to something. You know, what if he's hiding something from us?" I could hear him shift in his seat on the other end of the line, the tension in his voice barely concealed. "What are you talking about?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but I could tell he was worried. "I don't know. I've just been looking at some things. And, well, I think we need to be careful. There's a lot of money going into offshore accounts that Dad never mentioned. I think it's time we have a conversation about it." He was silent for a moment. Then, in a voice much softer, he said, "I don't know what you're talking about. Audrey, you're overthinking things. Maybe you should just focus on, I don't know, the family? We don't need to dig up old stuff." I could almost feel the sweat on his brow as he tried to cover up his panic. I wasn't surprised. He thought he was still in control. But I was slowly taking that control away from him, piece by piece. "I just think we should be prepared," I said, hanging up the phone before he could respond. I didn't need to push him too hard. He would crack under the pressure. The moment he realized that his world, the one he had carefully constructed, was in danger, he'd make a mistake. He always did. The gathering storm. As the days passed, the tension grew. Derek started getting more paranoid, checking in on things he had never cared about before. He began monitoring the accounts, acting like I wasn't the only one watching the family business. The cracks in his facade were beginning to widen. But there was something else happening. Something I wasn't expecting. My parents were starting to notice. They'd always kept their distance. But now they were whispering behind my back, wondering what I was up to. I could feel their eyes on me, and it only fueled my determination to see this through. But the real test came when Derek made a desperate call. "Where are you getting this information?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" "Audrey." I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. I knew this was it, the breaking point. Derek was finally realizing that the game had changed, that the little sister he had always controlled was no longer the quiet, obedient one. "Just remember," I said calmly, "you're the one who started this, and I'm the one who's going to finish it." The days following my confrontation with Derek were unlike any I'd ever lived through. The tension in the air was so thick, it was almost suffocating. I could feel it in every glance, in every silence, in every strained smile. It was like the whole family had turned into strangers, each of us playing our parts in a game none of us could quite control anymore. And yet, despite all of that, I knew I had them exactly where I wanted them. My father, my mother, Derek, they were all spinning in circles, trying to keep their perfect world intact. But the cracks had already begun to form, and there was no going back now. The battle begins. The phone rang late one night. My hand hovered over the receiver, my heart thumping in my chest. I had an inkling who it was, but hearing Derek's name on the caller ID still made my stomach flip. This wasn't a conversation I had planned for. Not at all. But it was one I'd been waiting for. I let the phone ring a few times, just to make him wait. When I finally picked up, I kept my voice as calm as possible. "Hello," I answered, making sure I sounded like nothing was wrong. Like I hadn't just been waiting for this moment. "Where are you getting all this information?" "Audrey." Derek's voice was clipped, barely containing the venom. I know you've been snooping around, and you need to stop. This is bigger than you. You don't know what you're messing with." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of everything I had on my shoulders. "I think you're the one who's in over his head. Derek, it's only a matter of time before everyone finds out what you've been hiding. What we've all been hiding." He didn't respond right away, but I could hear his breathing on the other end. Sharp and uneven. It was like he was trying to keep himself together, trying not to let the panic slip through. And then he spoke again, his words slow and deliberate, like he was weighing each one carefully. "You really think this is going to end well for you? Don't you? You're playing with fire. You have no idea what this family is capable of." A chill ran down my spine, but I didn't let it show. "I'm not scared of you, Derek. Not anymore." The line went dead. The family react. The next few days were a blur of tension. I could feel my family closing in on me, like predators scenting blood in the water. Derek's threats had done more than just rattle me. They had awakened something in my parents, too. They didn't know who to trust anymore. My mom called me one evening, her voice trembling, asking me if everything was all right. She hadn't spoken to me like that in years. It was as if the mask had slipped, and for a moment, she saw me not as her daughter, but as the woman I had become. "I know you've been looking into things," she said cautiously, as if treading on fragile ground. "I just don't want you to make a mistake. Audrey, you have to understand that there are consequences." I felt a laugh bubbling up, but I bit it back. "Consequences? Mom, don't talk to me about consequences. You've spent my whole life telling me I'm not enough. So forgive me if I'm not too worried about what happens next." There was silence on the other end, and then she hung up. I wasn't sure if I felt relieved or disappointed. I wasn't sure I could feel anything anymore. The lines between family and enemy were beginning to blur, and the weight of the decisions I was making was starting to settle in. But I couldn't stop now. I couldn't let go of what I had worked so hard for, preparing for the next move. As the days wore on, I began preparing for the next phase of my plan. The evidence I had gathered, photos, documents, text, was starting to pile up. It was almost too easy, too clean. But I knew I had to be cautious. One wrong move, and everything would come crashing down. The last thing I wanted was for them to get ahead of me, to turn the tables before I had a chance to expose them. I spent late nights going over the evidence again, making sure everything was airtight. I was meticulous, more careful than I'd ever been. I didn't want to give them an excuse to dismiss me, to brush me off as a crazy daughter just trying to ruin the family. This had to be solid. I had to be the one in control, and that meant leaving nothing to chance. I arranged a meeting with Karen the next day. We had to take the next step. I needed to know how to present everything, how to use it all to my advantage. I had the legal leverage, but I still needed to know how to make it count. Karen met me at a coffee shop downtown. She looked even more serious than usual, her face drawn tight with focus. She didn't waste any time. "We're ready," she said flatly, eyes scanning the crowded room. "The documents you have are gold, but we need to act quickly. Derek is already scrambling, and your father, he's on to you. He knows you've been digging." I felt a cold wave rush over me. "What does he know? Has he?" "Has he figured it out?" "No," Karen said, leaning in closer. "But he's starting to get suspicious. He's been pulling money from accounts, making sure nothing's left unchecked. He's covering his tracks. But it's too late. We've got the goods." I took a deep breath, the weight of everything suddenly hitting me all at once. I had to make this work. I had to expose them. For myself, for Lily. "I can't back down now," I said, my voice firm. "We have to do this." The call that changed everything. Just as I was about to leave, my phone rang. It was a private number, but I knew exactly who it was before I even answered. "Are you sure about this?" "Audrey." Derek's voice came through the line, laced with venom. "You're playing a dangerous game. You think you can take me down? You think you can take the family down? But you're wrong. You'll lose. We'll make sure of it." I clenched my fists, trying to control my anger. I could feel the walls closing in on me, the sense of danger rising. But I held my ground. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," I said, the words coming out stronger than I expected. "You've had your time, Derek. Now, it's my turn." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear him weighing his options, trying to figure out his next move. But this time, it wasn't his move to make. It was mine. "I'll see you soon," I added before hanging up. The air felt thick with tension, heavier than it had ever been. Everything I had planned, all the small moves I had made in the shadows, were finally about to come to light. The time for playing games was over. I could feel the weight of my family's stares on me every time I walked into a room. But there was a difference now. Something had shifted. It wasn't just about getting back at them anymore. It was about finally reclaiming what they had stolen from me. My sense of self, my dignity, and my freedom. It was a Tuesday when everything changed. The day I had spent countless hours preparing for. The day I would finally show them who I really was. The final piece of the puzzle. I had spent weeks collecting every shred of evidence, every file, every piece of incriminating information that could bring my family down. I had their secrets, but it wasn't just about exposing them. It was about making them feel the same, crushing weight that I had lived under for so many years. I met with Karen again, the night before the storm was set to hit. Her expression was hard, determined. "This is it," she said. "We've got everything we need. But we need to act fast. If we wait any longer, they'll cover their tracks. Derek's already covering his bases." I nodded, feeling the adrenaline surge through me. Everything I had worked for, all the years of pain and betrayal, were finally coming to a head. I wasn't just going to watch them continue to get away with it. No, this time, they would pay. Karen handed me a thick folder filled with legal documents, everything I needed to expose my father's financial manipulation, my mother's secret involvement in his schemes, and Derek's corruption of the family business. It was all laid out, black and white. And yet, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of something darker in the pit of my stomach. Was I doing the right thing? "You're not just doing this for yourself," Karen said, as if reading my mind. "You're doing it for Lily. For every person they've hurt along the way." Her words were like a jolt, pulling me back to the reality of what I was fighting for. I wasn't just taking them down to feel vindicated. I was doing this for the future. For Lily's future. I would be damned if I let my daughter grow up in the same toxic environment I had. The final showdown. The next day, I arranged a meeting. It was time. I invited my parents and Derek to the family estate for one final confrontation. I didn't tell them what it was about. They didn't deserve the courtesy of knowing ahead of time. The meeting was set for the afternoon, and I arrived early to make sure everything was in place. I could already feel the nervous tension building inside me. My stomach churned with anxiety. But there was also a part of me that was calm, focused. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let anything ruin it. One by one, they arrived: my father, my mother, and Derek. They were all smiles at first, the same empty smiles they'd always worn. They had no idea what was coming. "Hey, Audrey," Derek said, stepping into the room with his usual smug grin. He looked at me as if I was still that little sister who had no clue. "What's all this about? You looking for an apology? I took a deep breath, standing tall, meeting his gaze with confidence. No. Derek, this is about you finally facing the truth. He raised an eyebrow, his smile faltering for just a second, but he quickly recovered, leaning back in his chair. Truth. You've been digging into things you don't understand. Audrey, you've been messing with things that you're not ready to handle. My father, the ever-patriotic businessman, sat down next to Derek. His eyes narrowed, studying me like a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. What is this? Audrey, he demanded. Why all the drama? You've always been so dramatic. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. You've always known how to play the victim. Dad. But not anymore. My mother sat across from me, her arms crossed, looking down at her hands as if she couldn't face me. She didn't speak at first, and for a moment, I thought she might just stay silent. But then, in a voice softer than I expected, she said, "What are you trying to prove?" Audrey. I smiled, my voice steady. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm here to show you who you really are. And that's when I did it. I pulled the folder out of my bag, slowly and deliberately. Their eyes flicked to the papers as I placed them on the table, one by one. The truth. The documents that had been hidden for years, hidden from me, from everyone, were now in front of them. There was nowhere to run. I know about the offshore accounts, I said, watching their faces change. I know about the money you've been hiding. Dad. The manipulations. The lies. I know about your affair. And Derek, I know about everything you've been doing to line your pockets. You're not as untouchable as you think. The room went silent. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had the power, not just over them, but over my own fate. My father's face went pale. His hands trembled as he reached for the folder. But I pulled it away just in time. This is just the beginning, I said. You've ruined my life. And now, I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of people you really are. Derek stood up suddenly, knocking his chair over in his rush to get away from the table. You think you've won? You think this is the end? You have no idea who you're dealing with. Audrey, he sneered, his voice full of rage. I stayed calm, my gaze unwavering. I don't need to win. Derek, I just need to make sure you lose. The aftermath. The fallout was immediate. The press caught wind of it. The legal teams were called in. And soon, my family's empire was crumbling. The truth was out. They couldn't hide behind their wealth, their status, or their lies anymore. But the thing that hit hardest was the silence. The silence from my parents. The years of neglect. The years of pushing me down. All came rushing back. They didn't call. They didn't beg for forgiveness. They just disappeared. And in that silence, I finally understood something. Revenge wasn't about taking them down. It was about finally standing on my own, without the weight of their expectations or their control. The story ends with Audrey finally achieving the justice she has longed for, but not in the way she expected. After exposing the deep-rooted corruption within her family, including her father's financial manipulations and Derek's embezzlement, she takes control of her own life, finally free from the chains of their toxic expectations. Despite her triumph, Audrey begins to realize that revenge doesn't heal all wounds. The fallout from her actions is monumental. Her family is torn apart, and she's left with an unsettling silence from them. A silence that reveals just how far they've fallen. While Audrey has reclaimed her dignity and exposed their lies, she's also left questioning whether this victory was truly worth it. Her family, once a source of pain and disappointment, is now distant and broken. and Audrey is forced to confront what comes next for her. The final moments of the story leave Audrey alone, but not defeated. She has proven that she can stand on her own, free from their manipulation. The question now becomes, what will she do with her newfound freedom? How will she rebuild her life after tearing down everything she once thought she needed? The story ends not with a grand, emotional reunion or final redemption, but with a quiet, reflective moment. Audrey has taken down the family that failed her. But in doing so, she has made the ultimate decision to leave them behind. No more games. No more pretending. The future is uncertain, but for the first time in her life, she is in control. If you've been following Audrey's journey, you know that breaking free from the chains of family betrayal isn't easy. But what comes next? How do you rebuild after everything falls apart? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think revenge was worth it? Or was there another way Audrey could have gotten her justice? And if you're enjoying the twists and turns, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on more stories like this. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Remember, no matter how broken things seem, there's always a way to rise above. Stay strong. And I'll see you in the next one.